Hey guys, this is James from TeaDB, bringing you episode number 46. So today, and I'm going to just jump right into the brewing, we are doing the 2015 version of The Last Thoughts. So I've already filmed the last couple episodes that I think I'll be doing for the White2Tea 2015 lineup. There's an episode of the Bosch coming up in a few weeks. That's a normal episode. So you guys can look forward to that, potentially, if you're interested in that tea. So this, as some people know, is the kingpin of the White2Tea 2015 lineup. It was the big tea of the 2014 lineup, supposedly from the same farm. I was a big fan of the 2014 tea, and I've had this tea. I've been working through a sample. I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford it, but that says nothing to its quality, as it is a excellent tea. Alright, so this is one of the few teas that I will just drink that rinse, because why not? So the leaves are supposedly from the Iwu area. You could say stuff about old tree, blah 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 blah. Yeah, but I want to get drinking. So a very sweet, I'd say probably sugar cane-ish aroma. And before this, I reviewed my notes because I specifically want to look at how this may or may not be different from last year. And TwoDog has noted to me in a couple emails that the tea is a bit different, and that has to do with the conditions, more or less. 2014 was very dry around the harvest time, and this year there were, I think, something like 3 or 4 days with heavy rain. So the amount of moisture content in the leaves is much higher, and so I've noticed that a couple of the productions, especially like the late April productions or mid-April, anytime in April really, tend to get a little bit more vegetally and astringent, and I think that might be a product of some of those conditions. But I'm just going to wait for this to cool down for a hot second. So I am doing my customary 5 grams in a 70 milliliter gallon right here. A little bit vegetally, maybe slight, veering slightly towards nuts, but I don't know. We will get drinking. Cheers, guys. So one thing I noticed about this tea, just off of the first sip, as soon as you sort of feel it go down your throat, is that the tea is just very heavy on it. And I think Cwin of Death by Tea has noted to me in the past that this tea is like hydrocodone to her. The tea is just so heavy, and I think maybe that could be a difference between this year and last year, but I'm going to just keep drinking. It's got a real nice body even off of just the rinse, and I would expect that this next steep would probably be an even thicker version. Keep these short. So the steeps that I'm particularly curious about would be steeps maybe 3, 4, and 5. This is my 3rd session with the tea, and my notes told me I looked closely at the 2014 and 2015, and it sounds as if the 2015 might be a little bit more bitter or a little bit more vegetally / astringent in those steeps. But cheers. So the body remains nice and full. A little bit of candied sweetness in this, actually. I don't know if I noted that in the previous tea, but it doesn't feel unfamiliar. And I think really the best attributes for this tea for me are the throat. You can feel it go all the way down the throat, and then you can start to feel the various aftertastes that happen. The chi, of course, is very noticeable for me. One thing I would recommend, actually, to people is to session this tea first when your palate is really, really clean. Chi is something that I can often get muddled up, and especially if you're consuming more teas than you're used to in a day. Like if you do this as sort of like the tail end tea, which might be tempting if you're drinking 3, 4, even 5 teas, and you do this tea last. Some of the differences will be emphasized in the tea, for instance, maybe the body or something like that, but the chi can be a little bit tricky to discern because you've already consumed, just frankly, so much caffeine. So that's just a small recommendation for you guys. And this is a tea that I definitely recommend most people pick up a sample. It's obviously a very expensive tea. I think it is probably probably my favorite example of a young pu'erh that's very, very expensive that might be worth the money. So that is steep number 4 with no rinse here. A little bit more nuttiness in the aroma, a little bit more pungent. I heated up the water while I was off camera, and one thing I noted is just like the tea is very, very mouth-watering. It makes me just want to drink a lot of water, and it's not like I would say it's a very good feeling in general. Alright, so we're getting into some of those more notes that I was describing. A little bit of brown sugar on the front. And then it starts to get a little bit of vegetally and astringent. Yeah, and so that's kind of what I had expected from previous steeps. So usually when that happens, I just tend to keep the infusion short until I feel like I can push it a little bit further. Still very tasty. It's not vegetally or overly astringent, but those things would cause me to definitely keep those steep times short. And again, the energy off this tea, especially this being one of the first things I'm putting into my body at the beginning of the day, is just very, very remarkable. Alright, cheers. Continuing to have a good body. There's a zip of tanginess in this steep in particular. Also, take your time with this tea. I am probably rushing this way too much because I'm on camera, but like, drink your first 2 steeps, hang out for a while, pay attention to those aftertastes, take some notes, come back to it in 10 minutes, do a couple more steeps, steep it out over the course of a couple hours. Really sit down, enjoy this tea, and be present and in the moment. Yeah, I think there's a lot going on in this tea. It represents very dynamic sessions, so take notes on each steep, whatever is best for you to really truly appreciate this tea. It's got this really interesting, and I've struggled how to describe this aroma. It's a very sweet one, and I've wanted to describe it in the past of sort of like candy marshmallows. I've noticed it in Iwu teas, and I've also noticed it in a little bit of Jingyu teas, which is a little bit north of Iwu, the greater Iwu area at least. But interesting. Cheers. So the aroma is changing again. It's moved a little bit away from more of that pungent nuttiness to more of a different sort of sweetness. Trying to describe this is a little bit challenging. Maybe it's a little bit floral. I feel like that's not the right descriptor. Maybe a little bit fruity. Yeah, we'll go with that. A little bit fruity, I think, in the aroma. Very sweet still, but it's a different sort of sweet character than we got in the initial aromas, just right off that dry leaf, or right off of the first or second steep. Cheers. So it's still got a little bit of that bite, that astringent bite to it. I would anticipate that in the next steep or two, I'll be able to start pushing the tea a little bit again. Or I could take a break and come back to it, and I think that might be good for this tea too. The astringent bite and the little bit of tanginess are both reduced in this steep. And you know what? Let's try to push this tea a little bit. Go for 20 seconds or so. Yeah, so let me know if you guys like this episode, if you guys like to see these nice teas. I know that they're not as accessible of teas just because not everyone can afford them, understandably. So if you guys would like to see more budget options, stuff like that, I'm open to that. I drink a lot of shung. Some of it is really nice like this. Other stuff is like a lot more humble in its nature. I once again heated the water up off camera. And again, one thing I want to iterate, and I think I iterated this a lot in the first 2014 Last Thoughts video, is just that a ton of this tea is not really happening in the mouth. The tea has really incredible depth. Like, I just standing up, turning off the camera, turning it back on, I can feel the taste, or I can feel the tea definitely in my throat, but even into my chest and at the back of my mouth. In fact, the place where I'm probably tasting the tea the least is sort of like in the front of the mouth, which is where you'll end up tasting a lot of teas. And I am getting very, very thirsty, and you guys might note that I have become remarkably more alert as this video has gone on, and I can assure you that it's no coincidence. Anyways, I think this is steep 6, I believe. So, cheers. A mild, I would say all the astringency is gone. There's just a very, very minute amount of tang left at sort of the finish of the initial mouth taste. A little bit, and I don't know if I'm being affected by the notes of others here, but a little bit herbal and a little bit medicinal. Sometimes I'll get those in conjunction with the tanginess. I'm going to drink this one, and I'm going to decide how I want to brew these next 2 steeps. Cheers. Okay, so it's similar. That was, if you guys remember, the infusion that I pushed it a little bit of herbalness, a little bit of tang, but I can feel that it's starting to die off, so I could probably start to push this tea for 45 seconds, even a minute. Pretty soon I'd probably hold off there, just because I think this tea still has a lot to give sort of left in it, and it's definitely going to be one of those that I'm steeping out to at least 16, 17 times. See what that does. So that might be the darkest color. So it's possible that I may have over-steeped this by a hot second or 2. Sort of a sweet floral aroma coming into the tea now. Actually may associate that more, well, I don't know. It's not a super unique aroma at this point, and I would also say that the appeal of this tea isn't necessarily its aroma, not that it's a bad attribute of this tea. Cheers. So that thickened up a good deal. So I don't think I need to push the steeps as hard as I may have thought. A little bit, yeah, it's sort of like got a heavier bitterness to it, definitely from the push steep time. So quickly finishing up these last 2 steeps. There's really a nice heaviness to the base on some of these ones that I'm over steeping a little bit. I think this tea would probably do fine with time. I don't think you need to drink it up ASAP or anything like that. I mean, it's just really, really good quality base material that's been well processed. Steep number 9. So this one's pretty good too. It's an example, I think, of a steep that's strong, but not overly so. There's bits of astringency in it. I would say the main differences of this tea and last year's are definitely the chi. It's definitely sort of like heavier, knock you out sort of chi, and I'm especially noticing that now. The other difference I would say is, and this may even just be the difference of a year, is that it does tend to get a little bit more bitter, and for maybe a steep or 2, just a little bit of vegetally astringent. It may have been smarter if I were to just leave my sample bag peaked open. I saw Scott was doing that for some of his malcha, and that's just because there was a lot of moisture in these teas, so just storing it like that, obviously away from odors and stuff like that where it might pick it up, that may have helped to air out the tea and reduce some of that moisture content. Anyways, I thank you guys for watching, and let me know what you guys think. I would totally recommend this tea. I think it's one of the better, or the very best young Iwu teas that I've tasted, and very much worth picking up a sample if you have yet to try it. Cheers.